Greetings, this is Jim Lindsay. This is a CIS video, and in it I will be talking to you about content that's presented in Chapter 11 of the Design textbook. This is the last chapter of this book, and this is more or less the conclusion. This is the culmination, if you will, of all the stuff that we've been learning about, especially with regard to typefaces. So let's get into it. Alright, so as I've already alluded to, this chapter really looks in detail at different ways that you can use typeface, contrasting typefaces, and in doing so create a document that looks good. Remember that when we talked about having multiple typefaces or basically fonts on a page, that introduced a relationship between those different fonts or those different typefaces, and that relationship could be concordant, basically conflicting or contrasting, and you want to stay away from a conflicting relationship. So how do you create contrast with typefaces? And so this is where we start to learn about these details. Now, in order to do this, you hopefully have completed the lesson over Chapter 10, and you've learned about the different families of typefaces, because if you've learned those different families or categories, then understanding how to intermingle those in such a way that they contrast really becomes pretty easy, so or much easier. So that's what we're going to be looking at. The different ways that Robin Williams tells us that or recommends to us that we can make our typefaces contrast one another is through size, weight, structure, form, direction, color. Those 6 different ways. Now, what you'll find is that in most cases there's almost more than one of those going on at any one time. You're rarely going to see just a size contrast or just a weight contrast. There's typically going to be size and color, or weight and direction, or some combination of those to come up with a complete document. But we're going to look at each one of these in some detail as we go through this chapter. So as we get into this, I recommend that you get your book and have it in front of you. I'm going to present you with some examples, but there are many more, especially with this chapter. There are many more examples in that chapter than I'm going to show you in this presentation. I'm going to show you a couple for each of these different types of contrast, but there's a lot more information that you'll get from looking in the book. Now, I chose this picture for our slide because basically you have 2 different rhinos on the page. This one's young and this one's old. There's a contrast. This one's small, that one's big. The picture itself is a black and white photo, and so you have contrast between black and white or grayscale. So hopefully that's going to help you remember this stuff. Again, we have these 6 different ways. Let's get into the details of each. Okay, this first means of contrasting typefaces is the most self-explanatory, I think. It's where you can basically use large type versus small type. And so, as you can see, and I have 3 examples for you, and so you can see from this first one that in it she's actually used the same type, or the same font face within this passage here. But she has, like, hey, she's calling you a little wimp. I believe it's the same font. It's just that this version down here is just the biggest version of it, and so she's gone in and made this section of the text like really huge, as opposed to what you're seeing on the upper line. And what she recommends to you is, when you're going to do these size contrasts, that you be very deliberate and very just basically like really do it. Don't put like a size 14 and a size 18 font together, because at that point they're going to be so close they conflict. Instead of that, use like a size 14 and a size 64. So get that major contrast going on in the size of the fonts. So even with the same font on a page, you can start to develop this contrast in size. So here's one example. Let me give you another. And this one starts to incorporate fonts that you're going to see from, I believe, opposing font families here. But this rainfish at the top is really big. You have the horizontal rule here, or line, and you have the incorporated underneath it. in the very small letters. And so this is another really good example of the large font versus the smaller font. This would look really good at the top of letterhead, I think. You know, if you had a document that was going to come from Rainfish Incorporated to customers, suppliers, etc., this would be a pretty cool way to make a masthead, if you will, for that letterhead. So this is a nice example. And also, she's incorporated color, which I think is kind of good. You have some contrast in color here between the letters themselves and then this black rule right here. So you're starting to see that all ties together. So like we were talking about in the beginning of this lesson, there's rarely just one of these contrasts. You're usually going to see more than that. And so there's an example for you of going from the purple or blue here to the black line to back to the purple or blue text. Okay, let me amend my remark a second ago. This is the same font. This is the Memphis Extra Bold. This one right here, and then this one underneath it is the Memphis Light. And so that's the same font family. And likewise, in this one up here, you have the Folio Light, which is up at the top, and then you have the Folio Extra Bold. And when we get to the structure contrast, she talks specifically about these different versions of the same font that you can get. And a lot of the time, these extra bold ones, these really huge versions of the fonts, a lot of the times those won't come for free with the operating system. You may have to go out and buy those. And so when you're looking for fonts to incorporate into your documents, you may have to go out and purchase some. And so when you're looking at fonts to purchase, try and find one that's going to include like these everything from really skinny to hugely thick versions of the letters, because just like you can see from these examples, those are two really good examples where you can use same font, the huge extra bold version all the way down to the super skinny version. Okay, in this last example for size contrast, she's taken text, basically this bit of text, the sound, and this bit of text, the fury, and incorporated a graphic, this ampersand sign right here, and made the ampersand symbol really big, as opposed to the size of the text elements that are in that graphic right there, or that bit of text there. So you can also incorporate your size contrast through not only through the text itself, but also through maybe some graphical elements. Now, granted, this graphical element is supposed to be a character, it's supposed to be part of the text, and I get that, but that's not actually a character from the same font. This is something that was added as a picture, like a JPEG, a ping, something like that, and basically pushed to the background, and then these two text boxes laid out over the top. And you can see that from the layering here. Okay, let's move on to weight. And in the weight section, this is what I was talking about a second ago. The weight is where when you're buying the fonts, you can get everything from the really light versions to the super thick, heavy versions. We've looked at this example before with the newsletter back from like the very beginning of this, looking at the 4 design principles, and we looked at contrast. So you recall this example for another newsletter. Again, the same page from the left to the right, but on the right they've incorporated contrast, and you have this contrast between a black background and the white text on top. That's nice. As well with the typeface right here, you'll see you have the nice contrasting heavy weight of these subtitles right here. And so we've looked at that, but that's what this is going for when you're looking for weight, and we saw that in these examples right here with the weight and the size of these letters right here are much thicker and fatter than what you're seeing from the preceding examples, like with the incorporated there. So again, multiple contrasts rolled into a single example, but this is one you've seen. I wanted to bring it to your attention, but this use of a heavy weight can be quite helpful. And again, if you do this with repetition, as you know, those design principles you learned about, by repeatedly doing something on throughout your document, you're going to create an expectation on behalf of the reader, and they'll come to know that, hey, this is a subheading, this is a subheading, this is a subheading. So so that's weight. Check. Okay, let's look at one other example of weight, and that's this Mermaid Tavern that you've seen on a number of occasions. I don't know if you've necessarily seen this particular example of it, but the weight of the name of the establishment itself has been really emphasized, and so you have a heavier weight here, not to mention the size of it, and then we have this smaller font down here, much thinner, much lighter, as opposed to this heavy weight up here. You have a light weight down here, and then through that use of proximity, we're able to see that this is where it's located, and the street address as well as the city, neighborhood and city. So there's your second example of weight. Now, if you look in the book itself, and this section spans multiple pages. It goes from 170 all the way through 173, and she has more examples in there, and you can read more in detail about that, but those are the couple that I wanted to share with you. All right, so now we're to our third contrast, and that's structure, and that's where chapter 10 is so critical to your success with this. As you look at these different bits of text I have on the screen here, you'll recognize these. These are the different categories of typefaces that we looked at. Those 6 different families or 6 different categories. And you'll see that those 6 look good together, and the reason they look good together is because they're from different families. And so structure, basically, what I would like for you to take away from this class is that if you just put stuff from different families together, you're probably going to be doing well. You're going to create stuff that looks good. So let's look at 2 examples where that's been done. All right, here's the first one that I wanted to show you, and you have one which has basically the modern style, or the modern category of text being used with the big slab serif, and so that's a cool, pretty example right there. I can see that being at the top of I can see that being on a bumper sticker. I can see that being at in an advertisement. I can see that being at the top of a page if it's some sort of title for maybe an article or something like that. But you're seeing that the 2 families of typefaces being integrated together. It's one block of text right there, but this part's slab serif and this part over here is modern. Next is one that comes from, I believe, back in chapter 8. And as you read the book, I'm sure you saw that chapter 8 is essentially just it describes different types of documents, everything from flyers to newsletters to brochures to postcards, to you name it. Different types of documents are described, and then examples are given of those different types of documents. And so there's lots of really cool, good-looking examples back in chapter 8. It's a long chapter, and I don't cover it in this class simply because we work on these individual types of documents through assignments. But hopefully you've been referring to chapter 8 as we've been doing these different types of documents. This one came from the section over postcards, and you can see from it that the text on this page comes from a couple of different categories of text here. You have this sort of decorative right here for the neighborhood cleanup and bake sale. You come down here, you've got some sans serif stuff down in here. It also is contrasting in regard to the color. This text is orange, this text is black, this text is purple down here. So you see a number of different contrasts being employed together with this one example, and it looks nice. And so I thought this was an especially good one to offer to you with the structure example. Decorative up here, sans serif down here. Up here you've got serifs on these guys. So you've got 3 different font families all together right there on that same postcard. All right, let's look at our 4th contrast, and that's form. And basically what she's talking about with form is the shape of the letter itself. So structure, to make me happy, if you guys will remember, structure basically refers to the font family or font typeface category. And with form, it's really specifically talking about the shape of the letter. And she wants to point out that as you go from uppercase and lowercase, that there, in some font faces or some typefaces, it looks the same whether it's, the shape is the same whether it's lowercase or uppercase, but in many typefaces it's dramatically different. So you look, for example, with like these G, A, B, H, and E here for this particular font, this one has a totally different shape as it goes from one to the other. That's a contrast, and that can be kind of cool. And as you put your page together, as you employ upper and lower case, that can look kind of nice. This example right here, where she has the this saying by Dorothy Sayers here, she's employed uppercase down here as opposed to like basically upper and lower right in this longer portion up here. But in addition to it, she's also bumped up the size on this. You have a nice color contrast between the letters and the page that stands out. And there's also a weight contrast between the weight of these letters as opposed to the weight of this word wealth here. And so 3 different contrasts going on in this example right here. She also wants you, with regard to form or with regard to shape, she wants you to think about italics and script typefaces, because the italic version of a typeface, she recommends that you only use one italic typeface on a page. If you combine multiple typefaces, if you combine multiple italic versions of typefaces, it can look kind of weird. So let me give you an example here. If you look at this one, this comes from, if you're looking in your book, page 181. You've got work hard, there is no shortcut. That's and both of these are italicized, where what she would recommend to you is that basically this looks kind of ugly. What she would recommend to you is, instead of having 2 typefaces and both being italicized, instead go with one of those being Roman, which is basically if it's normal, it's Roman. But so you've got Roman and then italicized underneath it. And she's gone also to include more contrast. She's gone with a weight contrast here, a size contrast here, and I think you'd probably agree that this version probably is prettier looking than that one right there. It's a little bit easier to read this one as opposed to that one right there. And so whenever you're going to put a document together, try to have only one version of italicized text. Try to have only one script text on a page. And script, of course, is that whole typeface where it looks at like you wrote it with a pen. So those are some really sound bits of advice that you received from Robin Williams. All right, our last 2 are really pretty self-explanatory, or also self-explanatory, just like size. When we talked about the direction of text, when we talk about the color of text, people pretty much get that. So like when you look at this example with this Shakespeare Papers newsletter, the title here, basically the masthead has been kind of turned on its side and it's running the perpendicular to the body text, which is kind of cool. And so you can use direction as a contrast. So use that one sparingly. Don't go crazy with direction changes. But if it's going to be something like this where it's pretty clear what you've done, that can be a very effective means of contrasting the typefaces and it working. Lastly, we have color, and I've already shown you this example already with the postcard, in the different color of the typeface, everything from the bottom to the top, 3 different colors right there. That's kind of cool. The graphic has the purple, which ties into the bottom. Over here we have the Scarlet Florence here, and it's offered in different colors here, but you can also, just like you see in this great example right here, you can change the color of the font, and that can be a nice way to spice up your documents as well. So those are the 6 different ways that Robin Williams encourages you to try and incorporate contrast with the typefaces of your document. All right, so how do we end this? Well, basically there are quizzes, and if you look at the end of this chapter, come on back to page pages 194, 195, I encourage you to complete those quizzes. Again, pages 194, 195, 15, 16 different examples here of the things you can be looking at. And to get answers to those, if you come on back to the very back of the book, chapter 13 is the answers to all these quizzes, and she can give you some explanation of why she recommends this as the right answer over something else. So do those quizzes, and hopefully you've been looking at magazines. Basically the homework from chapter 10 was go get a magazine or a book and look at that professionally produced document and look for those different font faces. Again, go back to those and look for how they've incorporated these different font faces in contrasting ways. And I think you'll be pleased at how well you can start to spot those now, because now you know what to look for. You know how to recognize the individual components. You can start to see those different things coming into play on the printed page. So here's a summary of what we've talked about. You can use size, weight, structure, form, direction, and color in contrasting ways. So please do that in your documents. I look forward to seeing your work, and